for the queens, sisters manifesting their dreams. Get your cream by any means and beam with self-esteem. Beauty supreme and Buddha walk so mean. The way you fit in them jeans, you eat your cornbread and greens. Dance or a doctor, red wine or vodka. Redesign your spot and redefine your mantra. Retwist your locks and realign your chakras. Doing your squats and getting closer to God, huh? Brunching with your squad or taking a girl's trip. Adjust your crown, you God's gift to the world, sis. Celestial body, drink your water. Meditate, sun kiss goddess, heavenly order. Levitate, tribe of Ashanti. Black girl magic, melanin popping. Whether you ratchet or lavish, whether you bougie or savage, you a gift and a treasure. You got to love a black girl getting a shift together. Black girls are getting a shift together. These black girls getting a shift together, man. These black girls are getting a shift together. These black girls getting a shift together, dog. When God made you, boo, you know he showed out. Mahogany enchantress, blessings overflow now. Picture of success, seductive silhouettes on a spiritual quest. Manifest and be blessed. Mother, sister, auntie, tribe of Ashanti. Rocking your locks, I got a close crop blondie. The curse and the gift, uplift, apply pressure. Nothing like a black girl getting a shift together. Nothing like a black girl getting a shift together. Nothing like a black girl getting a shift together. Black girls are getting a shift together. Black girls are getting a shift together, man. These black girls are getting a shift together, man. These black girls are getting a shift together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together. This is a podcast about mental health and wellness, as well as self-empowerment for Black women. I'm your host, Ursula. I'm a transformation life coach, a mental health and wellness advocate, and all things melanin. Each week, I promise to deliver relevant topics and resources that affect our community. So just remember, once you can identify issues, you can always start the healing process. So I want to let you all know, we are coming to the end of season 2. It's sliding right in like a nice landing plane, real easy, no bumps. And this has been a good season so far. And I have a few guests lined up in a couple of weeks, and then we'll be taking a little hiatus just for a month. But thank you all for tuning in so much. Big news. Let's get right into it. My website, I launched it yesterday. I gave birth to the baby. Finally, I stopped playing around and I just pulled the trigger. We're just all going to learn together at the same time. But I'm very excited. I've been getting a lot of great feedback from the website. So just let you all know, the link is in the description box. So whenever you want to take a look at it, which you will tonight, make sure to take a look at it, even if it's on a replay. Press that button so you can see what I have to offer. And some of you may or may not know, I put out a survey just to see where everybody's head was. And we're stressed. Sisters, we are stressed. I heard you very much on these surveys. So what I did, I created some life coaching packages, and it's all about self-care, 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 and self-care. And if you want the details, once again, go ahead and click on the link in the description box for my website and you can see. But I will tell you that there will be group coaching. There could be one-on-one coaching as well. There's going to be merch, digital products. It's always going to be a constant flow of new products and courses. So just go and tune in. Now that that's out the way, let me know that you're here. Tell me hello. Tell me where you're saying hello from. If this is a replay, make sure and type replay. Please like, comment, share. This is very important. As you know, the topic today is about Pandemic trauma. It's a real thing. We're living in it right now. But before we get into it, I'm going to bring my gorgeous guest out of the waiting room, and she's going to come and bless the mic. Let me get her out. Ah,
Hi. Hi.
hey, Celeste.
Hi. How are you?
I'm well, sis. How are you, Celeste?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me. First, congratulations on your launch of your website. That's exciting and scary.
Yeah.
There's like two emotions happening at one time, but it's okay. So I'm extremely, extremely like happy and proud of you.
Thank
You're welcome.
you. I mean, yeah, we'll talk more in detail after the show. But yes, thank you so much. It was something, but I finally just said, boop, press the
Yes.
enter button, and I
Yes.
squeezed the baby out. So the baby's here for everyone to
Good.
see. So I would love to read your bio. I know who you are, but I'm sure a lot of guests also. But for those who don't, I'm going to read your bio.
You don't have
Okay.
to read the whole, you can just, I'm a therapist from Boston.
Okay. And there's her bio. So
Yeah.
let's get right into it.
I'm a therapist. I talk to people.
So I also put therapist. I also put Celeste website in the show description box. So whenever this is over, make sure and click on her website as well. And at the end of this podcast, she'll tell you what she has offerings on her website. So Celeste, we're going to talk about pandemic trauma.
Mhm,
And this is a sensitive subject because we're in it. We're in the middle of it. And
mhm.
just to let everybody know, I was listening to Celeste, one of her podcasts, about a month ago, and she had this woman on, and you all touched on the pandemic trauma, but it clicked in my head because I can't say that some people are going through it. We're all going
Yeah.
through it in some form or matter, whether if it's big or little, but what would you consider pandemic trauma?
Yeah. One of the things about this pandemic is no one's ever experienced it before. And
Right.
it hit us really hard. So, with trauma, I think, we are in survival mode. And I think for from March until like this vaccine came out, a lot of people have been bracing themselves, just trying to stay safe and survive, put food on their table, keep themselves in their homes. And some people are getting some relief. And now it's like dealing with the trauma of having to like been holding our breaths for so long. And now for some people, it's hitting them, right? Some people go through traumatic experiences growing up. And I think that a lot of times they escape their conscious self. And there's all these things happening that's formulating. And I think now we're about to deal with a lot of like mental health issues from a lot of the isolations, being anxious and paranoid about everything that's been going on.
Can you explain to our listeners about the consciousness, what you just said?
Yeah. So, one thing about our minds is that it's extremely powerful, and it helps us, to survive. And I think for, some people that may have grown up in like traumatic households, the way they've survived is by escaping, where they maybe experiencing the trauma, but they're consciously not there. Their mind goes somewhere else. And I know a lot of
Mm,
people end up seeing this as an adult where they find themselves struggling more because as we get older, it's harder to survive with escaping. That's why now I talk a lot about grounding and being mindful about like the
mm,
moment, so that because when you're not in the moment, that's a breeding ground for anxiety. So I think that
yeah.
it's something that like a lot of us have been just like trying to survive and eat and a lot of different things. And so now I just know that like one of my main concerns is like this like mental health crisis that's about to happen.
Right. You know what? And it's like a train wreck that's so far off, but it's coming. And it, like you said, it's here with some
Yeah.
people now. Uh, I'll admit, I'm an extrovert,
Mhm.
So it's funny when quarantine happened, people were checking out like, Ursula, are you okay? I was really okay.
Mhm.
However, I will admit 3 weeks ago, that's when it got me.
Mhm.
It got me. And I'm so used to being around people, but I actually missed it for the first time 3 weeks ago. And as I live here in Atlanta, I could walk around my neighborhood, but I didn't want to walk by myself.
Mhm.
I needed that
Mm.
human interaction.
Mhm.
And I actually was sick and tired of walking in my neighborhood by myself. I
Mhm.
drove into the city of Atlanta and I just took a walk. I
Mhm.
didn't know anybody, but the streets were crowded because it was a very nice Saturday. And I
Mhm.
felt so much better being around humans.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's
that's, I mean, that's,
real.
it's real, but, and that's one story of how you're able to like push past it. I think some people, when they start to see crowds, they get nervous now because they've been so isolated
Mm.
for so long, and having to throw themselves back into society is really challenging, I think.
Oh, I never thought about it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
Mm. I was reading this article, and well, before I get into that, I want to read a couple of lists and just to get your take on it. So, this article was talking about the post-COVID stress disorder or the pandemic trauma, and on the list they was talking about the traumatic stress. So it has witnessing severe illness, hospitalization, witnessing death of a loved one, and then being exposed to extreme COVID
Mhm.
communities. But it's scary because
Mhm.
myself, I'm at work, I'm exposed every day.
Mhm.
I'm stressed.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I can tell it's really done something to my body.
Mhm. Mhm.
Not
And
good.
and you have to keep working, right? Like you have to survive. You couldn't just sit at home. And a lot of our people we've all had to like work. Like everybody didn't have the luxury of sitting at home. So
Mm.
and I don't think, as soon as the pandemic happened and they talk about these uh guidelines of like being in the house, like my first thought was like, oh my gosh, mental health, right? I understand. I'm in the field. That's all I do. I do mental health. Like I sleep,
Right.
breathe it. But there was like wash your hands and all this stuff about like the safety. And I just kept thinking like, oh my gosh, mental health, right? And so as we got the guidelines and they got more of a hold of this thing and had more of an understanding, then they started like bringing up the mental health. So mental health, we can't see it in real time, especially if we're not like a self-aware person. We may not
Mhm.
understand the decline that's taking place in real time. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't see it until it just like hits them. And I think that like if
Mhm.
we were, like even pre-pandemic, we were not a mindful nation, a
Right.
mindful people. But if we were very mindful, we would see what's taking place and pivot. But unfortunately, a lot of us haven't been able to pivot only because it's not mindfulness is not a practice that we practice in our culture. I'm talking about like more like United States or even Black communities. It's not what we typically do. Yeah.
Exactly. Can you explain to the listeners about mindfulness and how they can apply it during these times?
Yeah. So mindfulness is really how do I get into the moment? A lot of times we're not in the moment. A lot of times we're not breathing. A lot of times we're bracing ourselves and we don't even recognize that we're doing it. And we just end up just kind of like learning to like cope in that way. Like we're not going to die from not being mindful, but we're not going to live from not being mindful. And so if you want to work on cultivating mindfulness, I really suggest to people doing it with the routine that they're already doing. So showering is something that people are already doing in the shower, like utilizing your five senses and just working on
Yes.
like, what am I smelling? What am I hearing? What does the water taste like? Aromatherapy, I'm so into aromatherapy, and aromatherapy is a great way to just get those senses like engaged really deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't like pay our bills. I know that it doesn't like get us a new house or anything like that, but it definitely can ground us. And so when we're grounded, we can be in the moment. And I understand a lot of us want to escape the moment because it's hard, but all we're doing is just continuing to transform our suffering. We're not changing it. We're just staying in a constant state of suffering. And when you think about it, you can never run away from your mind. It's something I always say. And so, like, if you
Yes.
can work on being mindful, you'll start to feel like you're in control and you are actually in the driver's seat. But it won't happen until you start to feel and be in the moment. And I do want to like say, like, I understand like how hard that is, but it's also necessary in order to like start living your life differently.
It really is. And I always like to
Mhm.
tell people the more you do it, it'll become, it's more like rituals, but the more you do it, it will definitely be a habit.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
mhm,
I tell people
go
like
ahead.
your mind and your body will have to fall in line with the environment you're creating for it. So even though like in the moment it may not feel like it's doing anything or it feels like it doesn't matter, your mind and your body will first it'll be like, Celeste, what are you doing? We don't do this mindfulness stuff. Like we just like keep it moving. We stay on autopilot, right? You're It's like a battle taking place, and then eventually it's like, all right, Celeste, I guess this is what we're gonna do. I guess we got to like get into this mindful space. And so eventually it happens that way.
Right. Question. What do you
Mhm.
like to do for your mindfulness and how to ground yourself?
So for me, deep breaths are good. I always keep some aromatherapy lotion with me with eucalyptus.
Mhm.
In sessions, I'll like sometimes if it's a lot I'm hearing, and I feel like I'm like not breathing, I'll grab it and I'll smell it, so that I can like really breathe. And
Yeah.
you know, I start my day with me. You know, I'm really like big on that. So I start my day grounding myself and getting into the moment to really look at
Mm,
what's happening throughout the day. Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God. When
Mhm.
I'm big on aromatherapy and color therapy.
Mm.
That really calms me down.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a light bulb and it has, I think, 9 different colors. So whenever I'm studying, because I read it that green helps peak the focus. So my room is green. Then when I want to just calm down, I have the red light. So it does work with the candle and some water, the water
Yeah.
fountains.
Oh,
Perfect.
yeah. Yeah.
It
And
really
for
does
people
help.
that may not have that, people who may not have that like option, YouTube has like free sounds that you can play. Because I'm all about meeting people where they are too. And so like
Right.
I don't want people to like not because they don't have access to not think that living is not available to them. So what you're talking about with the water sounds, like YouTube has these like sounds that can really ground you and get
Mhm.
you into the moment. I love that.
Right. So, excuse me, I was reading an article and it was talking about how this pandemic right now, how it can trigger people from past experiences. So it's almost like a double trauma that they're going through, for lack of a better word. So this one lady, she wrote a book, and at the time she was 12 years old when she was um, during 9/11. And so she said, now this entire year has brought her back to however many years ago that was in 2001 or whenever it was. And that watching people walking around outside of a hospital with masks on trigger. And then the grocery stores with limited food reminded her of New York. It was a trigger. And she said she knew her mental health was at high risk. And so she wrote an entire article about it, letting people know like this can happen, but going back to what you said, it's good to be ahead of the game and learn how to ground yourself in the mindfulness. And she also went back to therapy.
That's good. And because like we've experienced so many things, no matter where we are in our healing process, we can always get triggered. I think that
Yeah.
that's something to a lot of people when I talk about what's happening now. I'm like, that sounds a little bit like, when you was this age or that age. It was like, yeah, but that was a long time ago. I said, yeah, but your body keeps the score. And I don't think we recognize that how much whether we're talking about the pandemic or something else, how much um, some of the emotions or feelings we feel are eerily
Mm-hmm.
similar to something that's happened in the past, and it can just bring us back like we're in the past. The same way if you was talking to somebody and you was rocking with them hard and a song came on and you hear that song again, you start feeling like you're back in that time. You know what I'm saying? So like the same way it can bring up some good emotions, it could bring up some like hard emotions as well. So I think it's
Right.
important to remember that. Yeah.
So, what's your opinion about excessive isolation? Is that considered part of the trauma, the mental health part of this?
I mean, for some people, we weren't meant to do life alone. I think we were supposed to be a part of community. I don't think we're supposed to do life alone. I think for some people that aren't used, it's like literally their whole world could have been ripped from under them. When I
Right.
started therapy, when I started my healing process, I wasn't in the middle of a pandemic. My whole like vices wasn't ripped away from me. Thinking about like an addict who goes to detox and like all of their substances are taking away, their body goes into shock. And I think for
Right.
some people, that isolation, like their body went into shock because a lot of the things they may have done to cope, they no longer had access to. So I think that could have been a very hard and traumatic experience for a lot of people.
Wow. So, what about your some of your clients that you've had? Have you heard of like an increased sense of anxiety from them
Oh
during
yeah,
past year?
I think yeah, like I think across the board, a lot of people are
Yeah.
experiencing extreme anxiety. Even if people weren't touched with COVID, if somebody died during COVID, just seeing, there was this energy, this collective energy of like extreme anxiety around like all of these deaths. Every time you turn on the TV, the number, wait, good morning, COVID, good night, COVID. And so I think if
Mhm.
people weren't aware of how they were affected and continue to utilize like the news the same way, they don't understand how
Right.
much that stuff has just been sitting in them and sitting in them. And amongst isolation, like some people don't even have a family to be a part of, and some people could be in a family household and there's still isolation, right? So
Mhm.
I just think that like that part is definitely like challenging for people.
You just triggered something in my head. I'm thinking about the mental health of people who are in homes with abusers. That's a whole, oh my God.
Yeah, the kids, the adults, domestic violent rates went up. I'm sure child abuse cases went up. Um, and a lot of I only speak to adults, but a lot of the adults that I speak to that have grown up in like traumatic households looked at school as an escape. And so like a lot of
Mm,
people didn't have that, like, and so like, just thinking about that makes me emotional because um knowing like just being in this field for so long and knowing what happens, I know that it's been very hard for so many different people
mhm.
with this pandemic, especially people who don't have a voice, like the people that are
Oh,
in domestic violence relationships and the kids that don't have a voice. So I know that's hard.
that's so sad. I have a
Yeah.
lot of educator friends, and they're saying how rough it is.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Oh my God. So I tried to find that iceberg picture. You had, I forgot your guest name, but the trigger for
Yeah.
me to do this show.
Yes.
So I'm going to try to see if I can pull one up. Okay. We're going to try something new on here. Let's
Mhm.
see. Wonder if this can work. How about, I guess it doesn't work. Ah, is that too small? Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So this is an iceberg model. And so up here is what everybody sees. But I consider this part of the iceberg is uh, our mind. And of course, there's a lot of other things that can go in there. But I saw some of these were very interesting, like the nightmares and hypervigilance.
Mhm,
Does that
mhm.
sound? What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
I mean, when everything happened, I mean, granted, like if you were in America, we didn't have any, America, the government knew everything that was happening, and we just got information casually. And then it was just like everything's fine until like, no, everything's not fine. People are dying, stay in your homes. So like that's a lot to have like your life ripped away from you in that way. And then
Hmm.
being told to stay in the house. So the trauma of like seeing the numbers of people dying, if people know somebody, if nobody in their family has like had COVID or passed away from it, a lot of
Right.
people have been touched in some way. So I think about like being in the war. I've never been in the war, but a lot of the PTSD that soldiers deal with, from having to just survive, and like they may see their battle buddy get killed and then they have to keep going to survive. I feel like that's
Right.
what happened during this pandemic, and so many people are struggling with that, PTSD, that post trauma, and we're still in the middle of a pandemic, right? My hope is that I've always been a voice to try to normalize mental health, and I do see it happening. But my hope is that like it really gets on the forefront. It's in the schools, it's in the workplaces, so that
Hmm.
people aren't suffering alone or feel like, what's wrong with me? The pandemic's done. Why am I still feeling this way? Your body keeps the
Right.
score, right? So you're just because things are opening back up and the vaccines are happening, and you probably thinking like, I should be okay. It's okay that you're not okay, right? Like your body keeps
Hmm.
the score. So it's important to remember that.
So for someone who does not have a therapist, but they want to get ahead of the game, what are some things other than the grounding and mindfulness that you could suggest that to help them cope with this trauma that they don't know
So
that's here?
I know. Again, community is good. I mean, the one great thing about this, the one thing that we can pull, what's the beauty in the struggle with the pandemic, is that a lot of organizations have opened up their platforms on Zoom, right? NAMI is a really good organization that has a lot of groups that's open up their platform on Zoom.
Mm,
And it's free, right? There's free things. I spoke at one, and I remember a lady said, I wasn't gonna come, but I'm glad I came. Like my thoughts were like I was isolating, right? I talked about depression and anxiety, and just being in an environment and hearing like you're not alone, it does something to you. It interrupts that negative thought cycle that's happening. So for
mm,
people that don't have a therapist, if you can like attend a support group, and also like listening to some bloggers maybe on YouTube that may talk about it. YouTube, I say YouTube because it's
mhm,
free, or
mhm,
reading articles. Like there's a lot of articles I get hit up from magazines all the time about quotes from articles. So reading, just absorbing an environment and creating an environment that allows you to kind of see, it's that like, oh my gosh, it's not just me, I'm not alone. When we're alone and we're struggling, our thoughts will do some crazy faulty things, and if it continues to go unchecked, all it does, it continues to grow and blossom, and you start to believe those lies. And so if you really want to interrupt
mhm,
that cycle, and therapy is not an option, I'm really big on accessibility, who has access to things. And I
mhm.
get like a lot of people don't have access to therapy, which is why I'm big on talking about other modalities of healing. Really thinking about like, how do I like what do I do to be intentional about reading some literature or listening to
Yeah,
some things? I think that's going to be a game changer for you.
absolutely. And it's okay to turn the TV off
It's
to get
okay.
rid of that COVID in your ear and
Yeah.
fill it in with something positive that can
Mhm.
change that mindset. Because you're right. Once it's like a plane,
Yep.
it will take off and then it's
Yep.
just gone. And I'm talking about the mind with the negative mindset that you
Yeah.
didn't even try to have.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And I'm a very like intentional, mindful person. And I remember a few weeks ago, I was watching the news and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I felt my heart, like I felt everything in real time. And like, I'm happy that I understand what's going on, but I think about how many people don't feel what's happening in real time. And so what I decided to do was let me watch something different to offset what I just watched. Right. Because I don't want to
Mm.
try to go to sleep with that in my spirit. And so like, another thing you can do is start noticing what's happening to your body, like when you're
Mm.
watching things or when you're doing things, because your body a lot of times will give you signs before your logic hits. A lot of times, like if I feel pain in my
Mm.
back, I know I'm starting to get stressed out. So, but I had to learn that about myself. I wasn't taught. I had to learn it. I had to be intentional and mindful. And so that's one thing you can do is really start paying attention to that.
Right. I like that. I know when I get it in my neck, that pain, something's
Mhm.
going on up
Mhm.
here. And it's truly a mind body connection.
Yeah,
How does depression show up
it's all
with
there.
this?
Yeah, so one thing about depression for people that may not know, depression doesn't always look like being in the bed, what they see on show on TV, especially for like Black women. Depression could look like irritability. It could look like anger. Um, it's not always not able to get out of bed. So really be mindful of your emotions and how they start to like range and go in like an emotional roller coaster. If they start to go in different directions, like pay attention to that. Because one thing about us Black people is that we struggle with being vulnerable. We think that being strong means that we're not sad or we're not crying. And so we're not releasing like we should. And so it's not, you don't have to share it with the world and say, hey, like I'm feeling this way. But I need you to start being honest and real with yourself. That's the only way you start to heal, is if you really start being real with yourself. And being vulnerable allows you to tap into the whole you, right? You
I
can't
love
be
it.
yeah, you can't be whole if you're only acknowledging the good things. It's okay to feel sad because you're human. We're gonna feel sad. There's pain in life, and until we start to recognize it and name it, we're always going to be living in a cycle of pain.
Oh, that is so true. Especially with
Mhm.
Black women, we'll put that
Yeah.
superwoman cape on, and that S on our
Mhm.
chest gets bigger and
Mhm.
bigger, but there's no
Mhm.
release.
There's no release. No. And where is it going to go, right? And it shows up in our relationships and our, with our partners, with our friends, with they didn't call us back and we started thinking these crazy things. Like it just shows up in so many different ways. It shows up in stunting our growth where we're not doing or living to our fullest potential. The arrays of and ways in which us not taking care of our mental health affects us if we really start to pinpoint the connections, we wouldn't continue living the way we live because we would start to see how much that we're affecting our success. And so, like, the moment you really start to pinpoint and correlate, like, the connections, I promise you, you'll like start to be more intentional, committed, and consistent with what you're doing.
Wow. So how does
Mhm.
it make you feel when you have a client and they get it, that click, that
Oh my
they recognize
God.
that mind body connection?
Man, like I get chills, especially people I've been working with for a while. Like, my clients, they like my homies, and when they start to like when they start like I know it because they'll start saying some stuff, even if it's something that they've done or it wasn't the best thing for them to acknowledge it and to know like I could have changed it this way or I could have done this differently. I'd be like, yes, that's so good. If they didn't hit the lottery, like even they start feeling it because they start talking like me. I say, you sound like me. I don't gotta say nothing else. And I get so Yeah, man, I get so excited about that because that's the hardest. This is hard work that people do in therapy. It's not like they just sitting around like chilling. Like, I mean, we be talking trash, we be doing our thing, but it's they're gonna cry, but they're gonna laugh with me. They ain't just gonna be sitting there crying. They're gonna be like, and it's very hard, but I know I see the work they put in. And I'm
Yes.
just like I'm like sometimes I have people older than me I see, and oh my god, I'm so proud of you. I'm like I could be like so young compared to some people. I'm like, oh my god, because I'd be like so proud, like so yeah, I get really excited because it's not like 1 + 1 = 2. It's like you all over the place at times. And, sitting with people in the midst of in the thick of their pain is very hard for me to do. That's when I'm pumping that lotion and smelling it, because it's like, it's hard. I'm like, oh my God, this is so hard. Like I want to be crying with you. And, and what gets me through it is know what's waiting for them on the other side, right? I know like part of having peace is to acknowledge and grieve and feel that pain. I know that. And so, like, when they experience it, as sad as I am that they have to feel it, I have hope in knowing that they're gonna have peace on the other side, and that's why I keep showing up.
Oh, my soul is vibrating.
That's why I keep showing up.
I love it. I love it,
Yeah.
love it, love it, love it. I am, when I was in therapy with my therapist, I need to ask her that. Like, when did she feel that I had that click moment?
Mhm.
I don't remember when it was, but I know when I was with my life coach, I remember exactly. And when some people say, well, it may take forever and it's not going to take overnight, it may be overnight. I literally had the click overnight. And I had it with
Mhm.
you too.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And so, you're talking, suggesting other people, look at YouTube or
Mhm.
anything to be accessible. I'm letting everybody else know podcasts for sure.
Mhm.
And
Yes,
that's
yes.
how I found Celeste. And podcasts are free. And
Free. Yeah.
she delivered some message, and it literally, I had heard it already, but maybe 6 months later, I re-listened, just listened to it again, and boom, click.
Yeah. and
Ah,
and for pe- and for people, like healing is not a linear journey. And that's why absorbing your environment with where you're trying to get to, eventually something happens. And so it's not that people have clicks in my sessions all the time, but when they're talking about things, they've gotten clicks in other places because they're leaving the session and they're actually doing the work, they're actually reading something, they're actually being intentional. And so like I look at it like a flower blossoming. It's not that one time the flower was watered, right? It's all of the labor that's put into it. And I look at myself as part of that enlightenment moment. And and that's why like it's important to know like it's not just one thing. So if therapy is not accessible, like that's okay. Like let's look at what we can do. I think that's important.
absolutely. And definitely putting the work in,
Yeah.
not just sitting
Yeah.
in the session, but put that work in. It
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it's like going to the gym. I mean, you can
It's
work out, but
exactly.
you still need to eat right when you get
Uh-huh.
home. You just have
Can't go to
to. If you want
pressing.
it,
Yeah.
if you want change.
If
If
you
you
want
want to
change. Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
Exactly. Off the subject, but on it, what's your opinion when people say they want to see a therapist, but she can't be younger than me? He can't be younger than me. Because you said
I
something
mean,
earlier. You said something earlier about, well, some of my clients may be a little older than me. But what's your opinion on that?
I can understand. I can understand their thought process, especially it's the same thing. Black people want to see black people. I think sometimes people feel that because of their age they may not understand. I'm great. I'm a very wise person through my experiences and all my the work experiences I've done.
Mhm.
I've had older clients say like when I see like, I came in, but I'm like, let me just give her a try, and they were fine. Like they realized like I knew what I was talking about. I think that it's okay to want somebody older, but if you can't find anybody Be okay with stepping out your comfort zone. I don't think
Yeah.
there's anything wrong with wanting somebody that, yeah. I get it. I completely understand. Shoot, when I first started as a therapist and I got my first older client, I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do for her? Like, yeah, I was afraid. And now I'd be like, it don't matter who you are. Like, come on, let's do this. Let's get this work done. Because I've been doing it for a while now. I think, the way I operate, I don't think people think twice about it at this point, when they
Right.
see me, because I just know what I'm talking about.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And you said you don't see kids. That's not your
I don't. No,
specialty.
when I worked as part of this, like, a crisis team, I did see kids, but not in my practice. I don't see kids in my practice.
And what made you want to become a therapist?
So it was kind of by accident, right? I was my first year trying to get my associates because they said go to college so you can get money. And now I think people know, like, there's so many other options. Luckily I ended up in a career where I needed a degree for, but I needed another job, and there was an ad for a shelter, and I applied, passing out toiletries. But then I'm having these conversations with these males, white males, because back in the day at the shelter was more flooded with people that were struggling with alcoholism. It wasn't like the opioid addiction and all this stuff that came
Mhm.
later, because this is like before 9/11.
Mhm.
And so, like, I'm talking to these guys, and passing out toiletries, and they were always like, oh my God, Celeste, thank you. And I was like, why? It was like, because you listen. And then, like, I
Oh.
learned that there was, like, a therapist that worked in the back, and I'm like, oh, you can get paid to do what I'm already doing. Sign me up. So that's why I was like, I was already doing it, and so I just decided that I was gonna keep doing the work. So that's how I decided to become a
Mm.
therapist. I know,
God
right?
bless you. So can you tell everybody what you have coming up?
Yeah.
You have different courses and what's on your website.
Yeah.
How can people get in touch with you?
So celestetherapist.com, everywhere you can find me, the podcast and all my stuff. I also have, I have this tagline where I say I'm shifting the way you think. So I decided that I was going to create classes that can help you shift the way you think. And so I developed two classes. One's called Healing the Inner Child, and the other one's all about love. When I think about the common themes in a lot of the struggles that people have, it's that inner work that needs to get done from the trauma. And then a lot of people, like, say they want love, or they don't really know what love is. And so there's this author, Bell Hooks. I utilized her book All About Love, to create
Mm.
a class that can really help people rethink what that word means and actually come up with a working definition and not just a feeling. So you can find that at shiftingthewayouthink.com.
Wow. I didn't know you used bell hooks. Okay, that's pretty good. That's why you're Celeste the Therapist. How often do you have those courses?
So I offer it where people can do it guided by me. That's only 4 times a year because it's a 12-week program. The other
Mhm.
one, it's the same information, but it's just self-guided. So you'll have all of the lessons in the same way with the same homework assignments, but it's offered year round.
Okay,
Mhm,
nice.
mhm.
All right. Well, we're going to start wrapping it up, but is there anything else you'd want to add? Or, I mean, you said a
No,
mouthful already.
no, I did. No, this was good. I always enjoy talking to you. This was great, a much needed conversation. I just
Yeah.
encourage people to start with what you have, with where you are. I think that's an important thing to think about when you're struggling, because we tend to look at everything we don't have as a barrier to getting to where we need to go. And so I
Ooh.
just encourage you to use what you have and start where you are.
And we're plentiful. So
Yeah,
believe if you dig deep, even a little or a lot, we have it within us.
we do.
It's
Yeah, we
just to
do.
sit and slow down and find it out.
Yes. Yes. I agree 100%. 100%.
But what I just realized is that you definitely are a Black girl that has her shift together.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, you've always had it. All right,
No,
everyone.
I
Well,
haven't
thank you.
always had it. I haven't always had it, but I got it now. I
Well, you got it now. You got it
got
now.
it now.
Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure and click the links. Click Celeste, her website, as well as my new website. The baby's here. Everybody come visit the baby. All right. Thank you, Celeste.
You're welcome.
Talk to you soon.